to take it from there. Maybe introduce how you started using Climate Fresk and your iterations and etc. And then questions, please, everyone. Feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, sure. So I guess a brief introduction. So I am I have this weird appointment. I'm a professor of computer science at the University of Toronto, but I'm also director of our School of the Environment. So I'm very interdisciplinary. Started out focusing on computational models of climate change and are now broadened into doing all sorts of things. Um, so the course that I've been playing around with, where I found the Fresk activity really helpful, is a course we launched a pilot version of it last year, and we've launched the full version of it this year. So I'm about to teach the second class tomorrow. So the idea for the course, it's called Confronting the Climate Crisis. The idea for the course is actually was inspired by news that the University of Barcelona is going to make a mandatory course on climate change for every student. And so we thought about that. We thought, oh, okay, could we do that at U of T? And we thought, U of T is never going to agree to a mandatory course in every program that's the same course. But we use that as a starting point to say, well, what would you put into such a course? If it's got to work for very different kinds of students, what would you put into it? How would you design it? What would it cover? Thinking about particularly a student in whatever program they're in that is just going to take one course on climate change. So we ended up with a design that kind of walks them through, a few weeks on the physical science basis, a little bit on climate solutions, climate policy making, politics, economics of climate change, getting into questions of climate psychology, eco-anxiety, those kinds of questions, activism, and then threading through the whole course this idea of hope. How do you build constructive hope? That not holding back on how bad the bad news is. That there's a lot in the course the students need to digest. Probably for many of the students, it's even worse than they've heard. They're terrified already. Um, but what I do is throughout the course, I'm saying, look, the way you overcome that fear, the way you overcome that anxiety is we work together, we get active. And so there's this theme running through the course of we have to work together to build hope. There are solutions. We've just got to work on getting them out there. And then when I was designing the course last year, so we ran it as a pilot last year, as I said, just for 25 students. I did it as a first year undergraduate course. So I did it like as a small seminar course last January, and it worked really well. We've launched it again this year now as a large lecture course. We have 200 students enrolled in it. So it's gone big. The course just filled up on Monday. We had a few seats left in it, but we've reached our cap of 200. So this is going to be challenging. And then, of course, when I was launching the course, at the same time, I was reading about Fresk just over a year ago, and I thought this is the perfect activity to tie together what I'm doing in the course and do something hands-on. I love doing games and exercises to get the students kind of active. So what I did last year, as I said, it was a small seminar course, 25 students. Caroline trained me up, and we ran. I had a 2-hour seminar timetabled for that course. So I did the basic Fresk in a 2-hour seminar, in basically in 1 week. And I didn't do because like the third hour of the Fresk is very much the so what, digesting it, kind of talking about where do we go from here, talking about sources of hope and so on. And I thought that's all right. I've got the whole course to do that. So the 2 hour seminar when I ran the Fresk was just really just the Fresk building part. Give them the cards, did it in person. I had 3 groups of 8, so 24 students. I had 24 students show up that day. 3 groups of 8, just with me facilitating, and we had great fun. It went really well. This year, maybe I'll pause before I tell you how we're doing it. This year, we've completely messed up the timetabling of the course. I do not have a 2-hour block in which I can do it with 200 students. And this is the thing I've been really fretting about how you do it at scale. The rooms that you choose to do it in really matter, and a lot of our classrooms are just not flexible enough. The timetabling really matters, and so how do you build in enough big chunk of time in a course to actually include it? And if you can't do that, are there ways that you can break it up? So what I'm going to do this year, and I have no idea how it's going to work, is we're going to break it up into 3 1-hour chunks over 3 consecutive weeks and run it in their weekly tutorials. And I've had my TAs all trained up. I've put them all through the, actually one of them still got to do it, but I've put them all through the facilitator training. So they will run it in a small group activity, again, 24, 25 students, 3 groups of 8. They'll run it in the tutorial activity, in the tutorials. Maybe that's probably enough as an introduction, and of course we've got new people joined us, so we should pause, Caroline.
Yes, yeah. Yes, welcome to Victoria and Lizzie. I know Lizzie says she was gonna be on camera soon, so she's maybe finishing up something. Victoria, would you like to just say where you're connecting from and your university, your role, just so that we introduce each other?
Just maybe a bit of a stairwell. I'm Victoria. I think I know some of you already. I'm the advisor for strategic sustainability at OCAD University in Toronto.
Great. And you have not trained yet or taken part in a Climate Fresk, is that correct?
No, it's all very abstract still for me.
Yes.
Which makes it a different kind of exciting. At least a possibility.
Yeah. So this is going to be probably not too easy for you to grasp, but I think the general discussion, the idea here is what are the different ways that the workshop, which is originally a 3-hour workshop, how can it be inserted into either the general university setting or in a class setting? And that is the idea of the discussion here. So quite a few others here have experimented with the Climate Fresk, Steve being the most, I think, advanced. Anyway, he's deployed it to maybe more people, but I think Manusha has facilitated a few times at U Ottawa. And so, the idea is for us to have discussion here and a brainstorming session, because you're the ones, in situ, in the position to use the workshop. So it's very interesting for me as a representative and facilitator to understand how it can fit in a Canadian university context. So thank you, Victoria. And Lizzie, would you like to introduce yourself? Are you?
Yeah. Yes, can you hear me, right?
Yes.
Hi,
yes.
Nice to see you again and to see people already know and meet new people. I'm Lizzie Vitera, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Toronto Scarborough. And I work on community engagement and climate change and climate actions. So Climate Fresk for me is, I see it as an interesting tool, both in a higher education as well as a community engagement tool overall.
Yeah.
Okay. To learn more, and I participate in one Climate Fresk, and also, but I'm still learning.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. So it's too bad that you missed a little bit, but Steve introduced, his whole thinking and how this year is going to use the workshop in 3 different chunks of 1 hour each, if I understand well, with the TAs. And so I guess, do any of you here who have already facilitate the workshop in a university setting? Maybe I'm thinking in particular about you, Manisha. Would you like to maybe give your experience with facilitating in your program?
Sure. So I've just run it the one time in my graduate class. It's a much smaller group. So we had, 2 tables. I think we had a total of 13 participants. And my colleague at U Ottawa, who also was trained, was able to co-facilitate. So we had 1 facilitator per table. And we followed the traditional format with the Fresk and the debrief. Because we're in a public health school, we focused more on kind of the health impacts, health solutions around climate adaptation in the discussion portion. But because it was meant to be kind of the introductory session to the climate change and health course, we were very broad in terms of what potential solutions could be. So yeah, I think it worked really nicely for, a really condensed introduction to, the climate change science and how everything is interconnected. And then, the rest of our course, we focused much more on kind of the health impacts and public health responses.
Right. So for you, is this a way for them to, I guess, do you usually cover the science of climate change in your class as sort of an introduction before talking about the health impact? So is this, I guess my question is, does this replace or is it in addition to your teaching? Like, and the session itself, did you add a session or was it part of your regular sessions?
Yeah, so it was a brand new course, so I intentionally designed it that instead of lecturing on the kind of climate change science components, we would do the Fresk instead. And then I followed up with a kind of a short summary lecture going into some of the key terminology they would need to interpret IPCC reports in future parts of the course. But really, yes, it was a replacement of a lecture, which I think much more effective for students.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree, of course, but I'm biased. Did you, by any chance, I'm curious, because that's something we don't do yet with the Climate Fresk, did you test what people remember, what participants remember, or no?
Not formally, no, but obviously, we were referring back to the concepts and principles throughout the course.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, right. Yes, Laura, yeah.
A couple small comments and then a question, I think for Steve, especially because it's about shortening it. One of my comments is that later today, we have a couple of community climate freskers who were really excited about coming in and getting a chance to do the fresk with us. So it might be a big class solution or even to have one person per table. We haven't done it yet, but I'm excited about the idea of having other folks teaching them too and having that bit of a community connection to the classroom. And then in on that question that you just asked, it did replace a lecture on the science for me, or it will replace a lecture on the science for me. I am trying out a quiz in the following week. I link it a little bit more to I'm having them watch a video by Kate Marvel on climate science and impacts, and I'm linking it a little bit more to that video, so they have to do that. But it will. So I don't want to say I'm testing you on the activity, but I do want to test them on basic climate science and impacts and interconnection. So it's something I'm trying out.
Laura, send me the Kate. I love Kate Marvel. Send me the video. I want to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. Hour long. I'm doing it as a bit of a flipped thing so that they watch her do a way better job of giving the highlights than I would. Yeah, I'll send it after. And then I have a question for Steve about I can see the way it would split in the first hour. I'm a bit worried about ending after the second hour. I have 2 hours in my time slot because you you play famine, you play inequalities, and then
I am as well, and I think we haven't. We're going to sit down later this week and kind of map out how it's going to work. By the way, this isn't my choice of how to run it. This is what I've been forced on by the timetabling. I'd originally asked for this course to have a 2-hour tutorial every other week, and I thought, 2 hours I can just about do it in. 1 hour blocks of time is awkward, so I'm kind of re-engineering it, given that I was screwed over by the timetabling people.
Wait, I'm sorry, question about that, Steve, because it's difficult to do the whole Climate Fresk in 1 hour. Are you taking out some of the cards to
No, my plan, I really want to see, I want them to see all the cards, because what I want to do in this course, because we're going into some depth on especially a lot of the terminology. What I thought I would do is give them only sets 1 and 2 in the first week. So we're just mapping out that core greenhouse effect And what I'm going to get the TAs to do is at the end of that hour take photos of each frisk,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we'll come back in the following week. I'll get them to lay out pretty much what the students had ended with the previous week,
Yeah.
and then we'll introduce set 3, and then we're starting to map it out. But then I thought, okay, third hour, where do I stop the second hour? I don't think I'm going to give them the last set in that second hour. I'm not even sure I'm going to give them all of set 5. I think I might break it up so that I have 2 smaller sets. So I might rearrange the sets a little, because I think it's too much to do in that second hour. So the idea is the really scary stuff, you know, the bit where it starts talking about war and famine and everything, I would save to the third hour, where we've got time to unpack it with them. Because what I don't want to do is hand out those cards, have it all rushed, and then rushing off to the next class, having just seen this set of cards with the really scary stuff on.
Right.
So my thought was, just the core first 2 sets in the second one. I'm going to play around with which cards I give them in the middle set, but it certainly won't be all the remaining cards. And then really the third one will get into the deeper climate impacts. And again, each time I want the TAs to see if we can set it up at the beginning so that each group is kicking off where they ended up the previous
Just so
week.
you know, that is what one of our most innovative facilitators, volunteer facilitators, has done in Ottawa. She has been going out to public schools, francophone public schools, and that's what she did, because she only had, I think, two 1-hour increments, and so she did that. She took a picture, and then next week she came back with the fresk partially finished, and they finished during the second hour. So this was a youth version. So, you know, she took out, she didn't quite do the junior, which is only 26 cards. She did something in between. That's what I was asking. And you know, this is between us, you know, you can tell me if, because there is, you know, potential to take out some of the really complex cards, which are radiative forcing. You know, some can seem quite complex for people who are not in science. Now, for people who are in science, I think it makes sense, but for others, it can be, yes, Victoria, yes.
For those scenarios where the fresk is broken up into chunks and a student is away on the, you know, the second section for whatever reason, is there a way for them to catch up, or is that just how the dice rolls?
That's
well, I guarantee it will happen, because we never get full attendance in these classes, right? Yeah, no, I figured they're just going to have to. I'll put them into a group, and they will have to learn from working with the rest of the group. In fact, I think it might be a nice exercise when they first arrive for that second session. If there is anybody new, those that played the previous session, just walk them through. What did you do? I think there's a piece of learning in that, just the peer learning. I think hopefully I can turn that around to being something productive. But yeah,
it's pedagogical.
Exactly. Everything's pedagogical, right? Yeah. I've posted into the chat my course outline, so you can kind of see where this fits. And I've got this sequence of 3 classes, weeks 2, 3, and 4, where 2 is what causes climate change, 3 is how bad is it, and 4 is who does it affect. And so the three chunks, I think, map nicely onto those. But also back to the other question, does this replace a lecture or not? When I did it last year, it did, exactly as you guys were saying. It was instead of the lecture on the kind of core physical science. This course, with the bigger course with 200 students, I'm not replacing the lecture. I'm gonna give them lecture, and my lectures always involve a mix of snippets of video, little bits of demos, all sorts of things. But then in the tutorial after the lecture, they will then move into the fresk activity. So I'm giving them both ways. And I figured with the size of this course, that's essential. I think with a smaller seminar group, I'd be quite happy just not giving them the lecture.
Welcome. We are so glad you're here again. the Drawdown and Educate
Oh,
webinar.
I'm sorry. I think I started, I clicked on the link that Laura sent, and I'm sorry, it just started on its own. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, yeah, no, my worry with a class this size, and especially with a very diverse set of first-year undergrads, some of them will not get what I need them to get from the Fresk. So then the way I think about it is the Fresk is supporting the lecture material rather than replacing it for this course.
Yeah. Yep, great. And Matt, I think you had a question.
Thank you. I have a question for Steve. You mentioned in your introduction that you were or are a part of computing science, and you're also rolling the Fresk out to 200 people. And I wonder if you've come across any tools that could facilitate that size class or larger, that can sort of decrease the ratio of facilitators. If you have any ideas, or like a digital version or something.
No, and I'm not sure I would want to. So for the planning for this course, I mapped out like 3 or 4 different models that we could use, and then my struggle was, how the heck do I find a room that would work? Like, let's say I bring all 200 students together and we run one massive Fresk. How do I find a room on campus with tables that I can lay out for the Fresk? So you need some flexible furniture that can accommodate 200 students. And then I figured I need a whole load of facilitators. How many did I reckoned I would need at least 10 facilitators for 200 students.
So
yeah.
so that, you know, as Laura was saying, Laura is getting help today from 2
Right.
volunteer local facilitators to come, because, you know, we're lucky that we have volunteers who are happy to come and help out in a university context, and that is the experience of the Fresk in Europe. That's exactly what they do. They reach hundreds of students at once with mainly volunteer facilitators, plus, you're right, a few teachers or a few graduate students, but that's what they're able to do. And usually a gymnasium with some tables is fine. Or, you know, I'm thinking of a place where people eat. If you have I'm thinking of a university college where I went to at U of T. So there's a big refectory, I think it's called, or something, like where people can eat, and these huge tables, but just you segment people, you know, they can use one whole table, but so it's feasible. And
yeah, and that actually would have been my preference. This is this is the model I wanted to go with. Because I remember you telling me, Caroline, about these really big ones. I thought, I want to do 200 students in one big room for a Fresk.
Yeah.
And a couple of things frustrated that. One is I realized I would absolutely need a 3-hour block of time just with that many people.
Yeah.
The setup and walking them all through it. You couldn't get through all of that in 2 hours. The 3 hours would be absolutely essential. But then I discovered that room bookings in a university really do not help us here. So sure, Caroline, there are rooms. There are plenty of spaces on campus where I could do this in principle. Most of the better rooms will charge me. I got a price of $8,000 for one of our really nice rooms for an afternoon to run this. There's no way. There's no way that we can make that work. There are some cheaper places, but if it's not a standard classroom, there's a fee for service, is the way that the university does this. So one was the timetabling, that I do not have a 3-hour block of time where I can get these students together, given all the other courses they're taking. And secondly, just the challenge of finding a suitable room. I probably could have found a suitable room, but those two together is why I went away from that model. The other idea I had was to do it 2 consecutive weeks, split the class in half, 100 students one week and 100 students the next week. And then it's easier to find a room that will accommodate 100 students than 200. But again,
facilitators.
And of course, I mean, I think I can find the facilitators. I think we're growing a nice community in the Toronto area where, and I like the idea of Laura pulling in community facilitators. I think that's where we would have gone if we'd have gone down that route. But yeah, as I said, when I added up the timetabling and the space logistics, just didn't add up.
Right. And I know Matt's question was also about an online version. Is that correct? Did I understand well, Matt? Is that your question? So,
yeah, absolutely. I was curious about if, because it sounds like you're doing the card version. I was curious about if there was a tool available.
I have to say, I'm a huge fan of in-person for any of these kinds of. I've done both the online Fresk and the in-person. The in-person Fresk is so much nicer.
Yeah.
And I think especially for my students, because the other thing I'm doing in the course is talking to them a lot about their emotional response to this all the way through the course. Like I'm getting them keeping a journal throughout the course on their feelings. And to me, especially for undergraduate students, especially first year undergraduate students, doing it online and then, them disappearing into the ether, I actually thought is kind of risky in terms of them processing their emotional response. Whereas if they're in a room with each other, I think that mitigates some of those reactions. So my thought was, no, I would always want lots of facilitators, human facilitators, and I would always want to do it in person, unless I can't.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But that is true. And Matt, I can tell you, you've done the online version, Matt, I assume, right? Have you? Yes. So you know what it's like today. Personally, I think it's too much of a copy of a cut and paste of the in-person version. So necessarily that doesn't work as well. So if you put people around a virtual table, trying to manipulate cards on a virtual table, you're never going to get the same experience as in person, people manipulating cards and talking to each other. However, but I agree. I mean, I know there's a scale issue, especially in Canada, where the country is much bigger than in Europe and France. I have to admit, I would love to find some sort of way to think about the pedagogy, keep the idea of the Climate Fresk, but make it successful online. But I think it would take quite a bit of re-engineering, maybe using things like, Mentimeter, quizzes, and I'm not even sure today, as Steve says, that we would be able to address the anxiety generation. So maybe we could put people together to chat in breakout rooms, and they would chat together, but I still think would be missing the human contact. So, maybe a hybrid version, maybe, introduction to the science online and then getting together for a shorter version. Maybe, I'm happy to have your insights on this as educators, but definitely not having a real strong online version is detriment to scaling Climate Fresk in Canada, I think.
Caroline, we should have Nicole introduce herself.
Yes. Welcome, Nicole. Please say a few words. And as well, I think who else? Oh, I think she's disappeared. Eliza. There was Eliza, but I don't see her anymore. Okay. Yes, Nicole.
Hi, everybody. Nicole Arsenault. I'm with York University. Nice to see some familiar faces. And I am still somewhat new. I learned from Caroline and one of our alumni, actually, over the course of the summer. And we've done one Fresk. We tried to do another one just before the holidays, and unfortunately only one person showed up. So we have rescheduled that one. So I'm still learning, but really excited and want to figure out how could I get more facilitators at York, and are there opportunities to collaborate in the Toronto area as well?
And Nicole, do you actually yourself teach a class related to climate change at York University, or are you just head of
Sorry, I'm in the Office of Sustainability, so I'm on the non-academic side, but I work with all of our faculties. Obviously really close to our Faculty of Environmental and Urban Change. I'm an alumni from that faculty, and I work really closely with the dean as well. So really thinking about how do we integrate it. We did one with our C4, for any of you who are familiar with it. It's our cross-campus classroom capstone. So it's a interdisciplinary capstone where there's students from all faculties that participate. So we did a Fresk with that group.
Okay. Yeah, because the discussion so far has mostly been on integrating the Climate Fresk in a class context. So, you know, Steve has been able to do it last year, and this year he's doing it slightly differently. Manisha has been able to do it in her class. Laura is going to do it later today. But generally it's used basically as a good introduction to climate science, climate change science. And then, of course, the rest of the course is there to talk about the solutions, talk about the health impacts in the case of Manisha. So it hasn't been used so much in a community context, at least by this group so far. As you know, Climate Fresk is available in a community context, and that's what you know, us facilitators in the Toronto area do, is regularly we plan community workshops that anyone can join, but that is, you know, not connected with a university at this point. Sometimes with community centers in Ottawa, our facilitator there, Dawn, has a good connection with community centers where she's able to go in once or twice a month to facilitate the workshop there. Otherwise, yeah. Laura, did you have a question? Yeah.
I was gonna share with Nicole that our sustainability office at U of T Scarborough has me teaching a Fresk that's going to be, you know, similar, same thing as that you've been offering. It's going to be in March, so I can't share anything about our experience yet, but happy to compare notes later in the semester and connect you to our sustainability staff person who's interested in running this as well.
Oh, nice.
Laura, how did they convince you? What's in it for you?
I already knew her. We were talking about offering climate wayfinding, and I said, I don't think I can do 4 days. How about we do 3 hours instead? So
oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a good case study of yeah. All right.
There's something else I wanted to ask the group. Well, I have you here. I'm considering a graduate student assignment where I have I get my graduate students to participate in a Fresk and then are trained to facilitate it, and possibly even actually deliver a Fresk. I'm considering whether that's too much time for the 20% of the mark. These are Masters of Environmental Science students who most of them are in a climate stream. So one of my learning objectives is related to climate communication. Anyone ever try anything like that or thought about or have any ideas about that?
I think it sounds fantastic. I mean, especially if communication is part of the evaluation, right? Because they could even do it with a group of friends, family. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it hits your goals. And I think you're right. The question is it reasonable to ask them to actually, because I'd love to see them do it. I think that would be a fabulous experience for them facilitating them. But as Nicole was saying, right, you arrange it and one person shows up. That's not going to be a great experience.
That's true. If I was just kind of unleashing them to do it. I do have a high school partner. I was thinking about trying to weave this all together. It just becomes a little bit, maybe I'll try it out and see. It might be a little bit epic, considering it's their 20% assignment, not the 35% assignment.
Yeah, I have a suggestion for you, Laura, because I absolutely love your idea. That is just so wonderful to get students to go out and teach younger students the Climate Fresk. Is you could make it slightly easier on them, because for them to train first, and then 2, to be comfortable facilitating after just one time is a lot to ask, right? And so I understand that you might be hesitating. However, we are working on a teen version, which is perfect for high school, as I was saying, which is only 35 cards, only 35. So you're saving like 7 cards, I think. So it's a bit shorter to do. And I think, you know, the Climate Fresk even says that you can, if you want to, remove the really complicated radiative forcing card and the aerosols card, which sometimes is hard to explain, and the energy budget, which I find really too bad, because it really explains well where the extra energy goes on different terrains, anyway, different areas of our environment. But so I'm sure what I'm saying is I wouldn't give up on your idea. I think it's a great idea. Maybe just make it the Fresk a bit, and you're probably only going to have 2 hours with high schoolers anyway. Maybe just don't be afraid to use a little less cards, from 31 to 35. And I have the sets of cards for you if you like, that we're working on with the community of facilitators in Ontario.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much.
yeah.
Or
So
or Laura, we pair it with an undergrad course, so they train up in yours, and then they come and run it in one of the undergrad. The timing is going to be really awkward though, because you got to give them time to get trained. Anyway, I suspect the logistics are going to be against that, but
That's a good idea.
Yes.
I'll have to think about that for a future year, but maybe there's another
Yes.
course that wants to end with climate change and we could pair up.
yeah.
yeah. Or if you have students that are staying on from one term to the next, you do it in the fall term, and then they start facilitating for Steve's class in January. I don't know if that would work, but anyway.
I might do the actual facilitation as a bonus mark this year and have them get all the way through being trained as a facilitator, reflect on it, and then offer extra credit for actually doing a facilitation, and just see what they say about that.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, that's a great idea. We would be very happy to have more facilitators to go out into high schools. We're just getting Dorothy, one of our active facilitators that I think, of course, Laura, she's in talks to get approved by the TDSV. So once she gets through with the lawyers and all that, apparently it's very long and complex, we'll be able to go facilitate the Climate Fresk in all TDSB schools. So your students will have already opportunities just cut out for them. So that would be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, Ferdinand, is there any honorarium for facilitators? I was just wondering, is there any kind of other incentive that teaching assistants and grad students might have beyond adding that they're a facilitator on their resume, which is also a good incentive?
Yeah, of course. Currently, there is not. We have, personally, I have no budget as representative of the Climate Fresk. It's really run out of France, and even when we charge for the training, it goes back to France, and currently they don't send anything back to us. I was telling Nora this, this sort of effort, it's important to let me know, because then I can try and raise some funds from like foundations for education, in schools. And I do know that, for example, the TDSB does offer, compensation for outside workshops. My only issue is our group of facilitators that are quite active, they don't want compensation because they're a lot of them are retired. Now I do have another group that doesn't have as much time, that does want compensation. So I do have the two profiles, but the ones that are really active today are the retirees, so seniors for climate. So we have a big group of active seniors for climate, which is impressive, I think, because we always talk about youth, but we do have seniors that are really trying to play a role. So that is going to have to come down the line for sure. And right now we're just, connecting with the community, seeing how we can fit in, and then I'll have to request some funding to see how we can cover those sorts of interventions. Yes. Okay, any other questions? Anyone? Yes, Matt. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm wondering, will this be a recurring meeting? It seems like there's a lot of things in play right now. I'd love to see, like, check in again at the end of the term to see how everything went.
If you all would like to, yes. How often should we do this? What would you like the periodicity, whatever, to be? How, every 3 months, every two months? What sounds good? Anyone?
I don't know. Beginning and end of term is nice, or
Oh,
I was
like
going to
that.
say beginning and end of term too, while we refresh what we learned from the term, and then while we're trying to
yes.
plan for the next.
Okay.
Yeah, I
sounds
agree.
good.
I think that would work well. We can reflect at the end of term and see
Yes.
see what lessons we learned.
You see what happened. Very good. Okay, perfect. I got that. So would that be more like, is April still too early? Would it be May? Or, because I'm not sure when your terms all finish.
We finish in first week of April, I
Yes.
think. So kind of mid-April would be my ideal, but I don't know
Okay.
what everybody else is like.
Is everybody else the same, more or less?
Fine.
Yes? Yeah, is that good? Okay, so mid-April. Yes, Laura, corporate offices. Oh, yes. Ah, yeah, that's a very good point, Laura. I agree with that. Yes, that is another demand I have a lot in Canada, which they don't do over in France, is a certification. I've told them that we need to have some sort of certification that you can put on your LinkedIn resume. For example, I'm certified to facilitate the Climate Fresk. So I agree, that's a very good point. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. I guess, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Steve, for your experience. And I'll keep the recording if any new, and Nicole, if you want to, connect me with any educators, any professors, they might be interested in seeing this exchange or joining, of course, Climate Fresk in Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely. Will do.
Okay. All
Nicole,
right.
are you in touch with any of our sustainability office folks at U of T? I don't know if there's a kind of a network.
We do have a network, so I know quite a few of the U of T folks, and Victoria and I also participate in what's called OCUS, which is the Ontario College University Sustainability Professionals, and we actually had a discussion about this at one of our last meetings. Perhaps there's opportunity to engage the rest of our sustainability cohort around this and becoming facilitators.
Yeah, I haven't had a conversation about Fresk with our sustainability office folks, but I'd be interested. So if you're exploring that, I'm keen to see what we can do.
So Victoria and I were just privately chatting, saying we should do this for our upcoming AGM to see if perhaps there's an opportunity to do this for them, because I think that'd be a good way to expose folks to the Fresk, and then they could take it within their own institutions as well.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah. When is your AGM, Nicole?
I think it's probably June. I don't know that we've got dates confirmed yet. I think we're still confirming all the details and host institutions. So
Okay, well, that gives a lot of time to plan, so that's good.
and I think Catalin, I think actually at that meeting we did, I think, give your name as well if anybody
Oh.
was interested. So I don't know if anybody.
Well, Victoria, I think Victoria reached out thanks to that meeting, I believe. I haven't heard from anyone else yet, but yeah. What was I gonna say? I want to add something to your point about the sustainability. Oh, well, no, it's okay. It'll come back to me.
If I can add one thing, I did a climate cafe yesterday with we have the Dalleday Institute. They've got a wellness lab, and they're doing research around climate cafes. So that was my first time doing a climate cafe in sort of an organized research format. But I thought there's definitely opportunity and synergy there. And so we were talking about, is there an opportunity to think about as we're trying to look at more climate cafes on campus, is there synergy there, and could we think about what could that look like? So working with Harvey Skinner, he used to be one of the deans at York in the Faculty of Health. He's taken that on with his partner, and they've asked me to do a climate fresk for their internal team at the university as well. So there's perhaps opportunities to grow from that perspective too.
Okay. Is everybody here familiar with this? Is this an organization, right? The Climate Cafe, is that right? Am I correct?
I think it stems from the, I feel like I'm gonna butcher this. It comes from the mental health side, where they've actually organized specific guidelines around organizing climate cafes.
Right.
Also very similar in Toronto, Carbon Conversations, if anybody's familiar with that. So similar to that, I think it's just a more organized format. So there's sort of a prescriptive way of doing it. What I learned yesterday is, you can become a facilitator on delivering the climate cafes, but similar to the fresk, there's cards that are distributed, and it's sort of like, how do you feel? So it's a little bit more touchy-feely, less sciencey than
Yes. Yeah. I have heard of it. I've heard that, I think we have a few people in Ottawa that did the Climate Fresk and trained to be climate facilitators after from the Climate Cafe, but I don't know enough about. I haven't been to a climate cafe myself, so I don't know enough. But I agree with you. It's bigger on the emotions aspect, which is a good complement to the Climate Fresk. Yeah.
I'll pull up the link that I got yesterday, and I can share that with you.
Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds good. We should partner. Okay. Anything else? Anybody? Yeah. So it's interesting to see that we are here with two different hats. So there's the teaching, the class, and then there's a university sustainability office. And what you do is a sustainability office to raise awareness. So it seems that the two should be talking together, probably, as you were saying, Steve. And probably Climate Fresk is probably really suited for the classroom setting, but I guess the sustainability office could be supporting the awareness, at least, of Climate Fresk among maybe teachers, educators. That could be one way, I guess. And I did put in the chat that in addition to Barcelona, Steve, there is UC San Diego. I have an article on this that I can send all of you later that did make education on climate change compulsory for all students, I guess this year or just recently in October, I think. So it's becoming a bit more common. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this session, and don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. I'm here to help, and hopefully, make Climate Fresk a tool that is used in more and more universities.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thanks for organizing it, Caroline.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.